Good morning, Shalom, Namaste to everyone. My name is Hom Gurung, Regional Project Manager of BirdLife International, forest governance project in Southeast Asia and Pacific regions. It is a great privilege and thank you, Malaysian Nature Society, for inviting me for the MNS dialogue session. And I'd like to welcome each and everyone. I will be focusing this morning about nature-based solutions, particularly where Ulu Muda Forest Complex in Kedah State. I will be linking how nature-based solution can help to save the greater Ulu Muda Forest Complex. As I come from the BirdLife International, BirdLife International is a global partnership of non-governmental organizations in more than 114 countries and territories. BirdLife International is guided by its strategy, which is an opportunity for strategic and integrated approach for partnership for nature and people. So within the BirdLife strategy, we have 4 main pillars, which are species conservation and sites and habitats, mostly conservation of important sites and habitats around the globe, and also sustainability, where ecological sustainability is key for not just for the present generation, but also future generation. So ecological sustainability is our another important pillar. And the final and the most important is people. Empowering local people for nature conservation, for sustainable livelihoods, and working for the environment and our birds and biodiversity. So these 4 pillars are very important to guide BirdLife's work around the globe. So BirdLife has 9 conservation programs, and all the partners around the globe are working what we call the local to global approach, where in each country we are very strong nature conservation partners who work in the particular country with different conservation priorities. So globally, there are climate change, important bird and biodiversity area, invasive land species, capacity building, marine program, migratory birds and flyways. Globally, there are 9 flyways for migratory birds, and also preventing extinction, particularly endangered species, and also forest. We also have a Forest of Hope programs in 19 countries around the globe. In Malaysia, we have the Royal Belum, State Forest Park, and also the local empowerment, which is important part of our global conservation programs. I am very happy to share my thoughts on the nature-based solutions. It is important in today's challenging world, where we have to provide human well-being at the same time also biodiversity benefits. If we can invest for biodiversity conservation, that will help the human beings. So it is basically a very simple, sustainably and manage and also restore many natural or modified ecosystems around the globe that address the society's needs at the same time, also the biodiversity benefits. If you see the umbrella term for ecosystem-related approaches as a concept framework, is very important, like for example, restoration of forest or very issue-based conservation activities that need to be addressed. And also infrastructure, because human beings need infrastructure, but like for example bioengineering or green engineering, which is pro-environment related activities that can help and meet our human well-being, at the same time help to protect the environment. Also management of, like for example, watershed area, for example in Ulu Muda Greater Forest Complex, or protection of important sites like national parks and other protected areas. So these protection is very much ecosystem based, what we call ecosystem based approach. It is what is happening in the nature. Nature has its own way of doing things, so we have to respect and follow the way that will be sustainable, that will be compatible to the environment, and also help to address the human beings and biodiversity benefits. So as we said, ecosystem and ecosystem services are very important. This is the terminology is getting very common and popular. Ecosystem services, or some say environmental services, which are basically human beings get free of cost from nature. We don't care much because we get free. Until and unless we pay, we always ignore many things which we get from nature. But it has a tremendous economic value. So if we see in the market, if you go in the shop, you have to pay everything. For example, in the ecosystem services, you can see the like provisioning, like water, drinking water, for example, or firewood, or fish, or food that we get, which is called provisioning. Also by regulating, the nature has its own way of doing things. So it's very important. Also, they're supporting. And the another part is cultural, which also we call aesthetic value, where recreational, tourism, culture, you can't compare with money. But when you go there as a tourist, you see beautiful landscape that gives lots of mental health benefits. So these are very important as part of our culture. Our nature also trying to provide in the cultural values that human beings enjoy. So it's very important, and the challenging part, how to understand and also have the proper institutions in place that guide for wise investment, like natural capital on a large scale. So it's like a money, it's a big money we have to invest, and so that we will get return. So ecosystem services are very important, and currently there are three important fronts that we have to understand. The first is science of ecosystem, how the production system, how they function, and also the service they provide. So we need to have a mapping on this. Second, we also need to design in a more appropriate way for financing, for better and sound policies, and better governance system that will help to protect the ecosystems so that we get the benefits. So we need a very proactive, a very good art of implementing this in diverse biophysical and social contexts. Because ecosystem sometimes is very complex, depend on the area, there are lots of threat. So we have to focus on different management options in terms of shaping the ecosystem that will benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to share the Bird Lab led and funded by the European Union and our partners in Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, in the Papua New Guinea, and two universities, CIDT in UK and Papua New Guinea, PNG, University of Papua New Guinea in Papua New Guinea. We all work as a team, as a project partners to address the forest governance issues in the Asia, the 4 countries in the Asia Pacific regions. So, and Malaysian Nature Society is our partner in Malaysia, who are leading the project at the country level. So they are, as I mentioned, the 4 countries are like Malaysia, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea. So all these countries are a very rich, biodiversity area, and all these areas are very unique, very important sites for human beings, not just for the biodiversity. So in Malaysia, for example, our partner, Malaysian Nature Society, they mostly focus in heart of Borneo, and also then in Belum, Temangor. So these are the 2 sites, but we also try to support as part of replication of the ongoing efforts for the forest governance project in Malaysia. So these are the important sites of what we call the 4 components that we want to achieve, is starting from the capacity building of local people, what we call the non-state actors, means non-governmental organization. But having said that, the governments are a very important partner, so we always work very closely in order to bring the synergy and sharing and information, and to have a more knowledge, understanding about how the forest governance and management system work in each country. So transparency and information are another component that will also lead what we call hard work, teamwork, network. So all the partners are working very hard at the very hard at the country level, and they're also working in a very good team, but at the same time building a very strong network of community-based organizations, community people, even around Asli, people who are living around the forest. So need a very networking and cooperation for better forest management. So all these three components will help, for a better forest policy. So we need to identify the gaps where we also can, work very closely with the government. So having said that, for example, there's a like flag T, BPA, or Red Plus, both regional or national or international issues. So we try to inform, effective participation of the non-governmental organizations at national and provincial government or state level for policy process. So these are key, 4 components of outcome that we achieve. The project was started in 2017 and it is until the January 2022. So over the period of 5 years, we are working very closely with our project partners and our community-based organization with the support of the governments. So as I said before, there are important bird and biodiversity areas, which are what we call the IBAs, or now the key biodiversity areas. Around the globe, there are more than 13,000 IBAs, KBAs have been identified until today. So you can see all the green parts are the IBAs, the KBAs, which are very important for birds, very important for biodiversity, and the people who are living around that sites. So around the sites, what we call the local conservation groups. There are about 4,000 local conservation groups who are working, protecting the environment, safeguarding the forest, at the same time, building the network for better forest and conservation sites. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's talk about the Ulumuda forest complex. Ulumuda forest complex, very close to the north of Malaysia, almost bordering with Thailand. So the Ulumuda forest complex is very important, and it consists of 6 forest reserves. That's why what we call also Greater Ulumuda forest. So 160,000 hectares. You can see here in the picture. And this, is a very important forest complex for Kedah State because it is the main source of drinking water. So it's a main water catchment area and there are three different, dams that's constructed for the water, drinking water and irrigation, which is a multiple use. And the forest is very important. Forest complex is very important because it simply provides 96% of Kedah's drinking water and 80% of Penang's water supply. So it's very important to protect this forest as a bigger watershed area. It's very important that we not just look for the forest itself, but also the water that is very important for human being survival. But having said that, so there are numerous threats. One is basically unsustainable logging activities, which could be both legal, they got the permit, but also illegal. So this has threatened the Ulumuda's role as a water catchment by affecting the quality as well as the quality and the volume of water output. So this is very important. Until now, we are getting free from nature, but it's very important to monitor the water catchment area and also to protect the watershed as a whole. Then there are also a lot of clearing of forest patches, particularly logging. Is quite very common, which is a really worry in the long run, because it also when the logging means the forest, all the soil, the forest which are containing the soil. Now the soil will go in the Ulumuda's lakes and rivers. So there is lots of the soil will be going down to the rivers, which means it also affects the quality of the water. It will pollute the water, and it will have lots of in terms of the water quality. So you have to invest more money for treatment. So this will affect over 4 million people, and also threaten the livelihood of the people. So I think it's very important. And if you see all the threats here, our partner Malaysian Nature Society and our science team of BirdLife International based in Cambridge are working very closely through by using the Google Earth engine in terms of to see the forest loss through the different drivers of forest logging or deforestation or many other activities or human activities that has created a more pressure in the important bird area. So this is one example for the Kedah states, Ulumuda, Greater Ulumuda or Ulumuda Forest Complex, which is one of the important IVA. In Malaysia, there are 55 IVAs, and Ulumuda Forest Complex is one of the important IVA sites in Malaysia. You can see right from 2000 to 2019, different colors indicates the maybe like forest logging, for example, each year. So you can see, for example, 2016, 2019, like here, more red. So there's something is happening. So this is the data we got very recently, that what we call the forest loss dashboard. So with our partner, we'll go and also go at the sites. And luckily, Malaysian Nature Society has strong branches across the country. For example, the Kedah, Malaysian Nature Society branch with the headquarters MNES can work together to really verify on the ground to get the clear picture. So this is one example of the threat or the logging going on. And you can see next is another like the royal balloon, the another important bird area, which you see more greenery. More greens means so the forest is very much well protected compared to the Ulumuda IVA. So it is Malaysian Nature Society has recognized this IVA as an IVA in danger. So that means it's very important to protect the greater Ulumuda Forest Complex for the benefit of the Kedah people and Malaysia. Otherwise, it will be too late in the future. So you can see, I got a very, I had a quick research what the media or what is going on about the forest. If you see on the ground, for example, I found from the, straight away from the newspaper, from an FMT, Free Malaysia. So like, stop Ulumuda logging first, then give 100 million ringgit. Penang tells Putrajaya. So it's a very strong message. Means they are like, and this is the picture. The picture, a section of the Ulumuda Forest Reserve near Pedu Dam, clear apparently for timber. So this is the one example what is happening on the ground. You can see where the Pedu the dam. So maybe it was clear when during that period. But having said that, the logging is happening. So you can see from the satellite image and that generated from Google Earth engine. And so this is one example I visited last year myself with our Malaysian Nature Society team to Ulumuda Dam during dry season. So I think it's April 1st or April 2nd. So you can see the water levels are going down. You can see the high, on the top. So people get normally free, so they don't care. But when I went to there, before I reached there, I had to pay 1 ringgit 30 cents for this 600 millimeter of water. So as I said before, the ecosystem services, it has a high tremendous value. So we have to protect the watershed area. We have to protect the forest so that the water has a multiple benefits, not just for drinking or industrial purpose, but for country, the state like Kedah, like the rice bowl of Malaysia. How can how can we continue providing 40% of rice requirements of Malaysia by Kedah state alone when there is no Ulumuda Forest Complex? So until and unless it is we can protect the Ulumuda Forest Complex, then the economic, the numerous economic benefit. From my experience, I come from Nepal. Rice is very expensive because we don't have that kind of free water you get from the big forest. So our rice field are just depend on we have to look at the sky when the rain starts to fall. So there's no rainfall means no rice. But here you are very lucky in the Kedah state because of the the big the watershed, the Ulumuda forest complex. So in the upstream, there may be also local communities or Orang Asli who are protecting the forest. So in the downstream where local people are growing rice, the rice also may attract because Kedah is very close to Thailand, can promote this kind of even helping to feed lots of people, not just in Malaysia but around in other countries as well. So it is very important to understand what is happening on the top and also what is happening on the upstream and downstream. So we need to understand how the economy will depend on the protection of the forest. So it's a key message is protection. So Malaysian Nature Society is leading and like to congratulate. They are now celebrating the 80th birthday this year. So a very important and robust NGO in Malaysia. We are very proud of MNES. And one important thing is working with the government, working with various state governments, and working with other alliance non-governmental organizations for better forest governance. So where we work in terms of policy, influencing to policy makers, and work with the different stakeholders. So from my quick field visit there last year, and our close communication with MNES and our ongoing dialogue, I think I believe as part of the nature-based solution, is this the answer? I would say yes. A nature-based solution is the cheapest way of protecting our Mother Earth, protecting our forest. So it would be very nice, and very urgent, like to designate, to establish, the Greater Ulumuda as a protected area. If you can protect or declare as a protected area like national park, that will bring instantly 3 benefits. First is watershed management. From next 50 years to 100 years, there will be a water crisis. So if we don't protect the Greater Ulumuda as a protected area, like a national park, then it will be too late. So watershed management is very important. And in this case, in many areas, the management is called do nothing. You just safeguard, have a legal protection. So the water, the forest will be looking after themselves. So that's very important. Second is biodiversity conservation. So Malaysia, I think one of the 12 mega biodiversity countries in the world. So it is very important. We have to safeguard and protect like the Greater Ulumuda rather than just thinking for a short-term gains like timber logging. So biodiversity is very important. And the third, I believe, you can promote nature-based tourism because you're also very close to Thailand, border with Thailand, and that forest is very unique. And nature-based tourism is key to generate local income, local jobs, at the same time safeguard the environment, the forest. So tourism can help to not just to safeguard the biodiversity, but also generate local income. And local people are more, ownership. And these days, forest is becoming very, very important. Like people go, they're so busy life. It's also very good for mental health to go in the forest, have a forest therapy. So people really come with refreshment and they can really generate more energy for their work. So it's a long-term protected area is very important. I think Ulumuda, Greater Ulumuda deserves as to be a protected area. It will be a long-term benefits for the people and biodiversity. So that will also help globally, not within the Kedah state or Malaysia or beyond Malaysia, as all the countries are committed towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. From this, like the Greater Ulumuda forest complex, I think immediately can help. For example, goal 1, no poverty. As I said, rice is one of the, I think, cheapest because of the water you have there. You can produce more rice. That means it helps. Goal 2, zero hunger. See? And like another is like clean water and sanitation. Goal 6. It's a big issue in developing countries. So clean water is very important, and you are very lucky the water is there. So another very important goal is goal 13, climate action. Climate change. All the farmers are already experiencing hotter weather, warmer. So that if you don't protect the forest, it will be more warmer, will be more challenging for people and their livelihoods. And lastly, and very important, is goal 15, life on land, life on earth, so which is basically forest, biodiversity, ecosystem restoration, all these interventions that will help to meet local people's need, national needs, and globally, and to make our home very safe. So terima kasih once again. Thank you very much, Malaysian Nature Society, and everyone who are listening this morning for my talk. I'm very happy for Q&A, and once again, I'd like to visit again there. And thank you very much, and namaste.
Welcome to the Climate Action Forum. MNS will organize a series of forums related to climate change. And today we have Dr. Hom Gurong from BirdLife International. Dr. Hom.
Hi, Prof.
Yeah, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can see you. I cannot see you now. I believe you are in very good condition now. You are healthy enough after come out from the forest?
Yes, so far so good.
Yeah, okay,
thank you,
good.
Prof.
Wow, I can see you. Are you in the forest now?
Not exactly in the forest, but there's a forest behind me and the rice field.
Thank you. I believe you have been working a lot in the forest. Dr. Hom is a BirdLife International representative in this regional representative for My Forest program. Is that right?
The EU-funded BirdLife-led forest government program.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit? Can you tell me about a bit about your position in Malaysia as a BirdLife representative and the project that you are doing now with MNS?
Thank you so much, Prof. Ismail. My main role here as the regional project manager in Malaysia is to support our project partners in 4 countries, in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Papua New Guinea. So my main role is to coordinate the project in these 4 project partners so that we can smoothly run the 5-year forest governance project.
So the 5 years project is from 2017
to 2021.
2021. Well, mainly the project is about forests, about biodiversity. Can you elaborate a bit the objective of the program?
Thank you, Prof. The project is basically a capacity building for better forest governance, particularly targeting non-state actors, means non-governmental organizations. But having said that, the role of governments are very crucial, very important. So the project has basically 4 components. The first one is capacity building of non-governmental organizations or community-based organizations, like Orang Asli, who live in the village nearby the forest. The second is like information sharing, so that what are the things on ground people will know about transparency, to know more about the forest. Then third is about networking, where people can come together within the country, within the community, or across the region, so that people will learn from each other for better forest governance. Then ultimately, finally linking with the better forest policy. So it's linking from the grassroots where local people live and manage the forest with the support of the government and other stakeholders, and ultimately helping the government and other stakeholders in terms of better forest governance, where people will be equipped about right information. They'll have know more about the forest, the rules, regulations, all the existing rules, regulations, so that people will know, and also about their role, how they can play a crucial role in better forest governance. So these four components of the project are interlinked. So it's a capacity building for non-governmental organization for better forest governance.
Okay, thank you. I can see that clearly. So that's what Malaysian Nature Society play roles in Malaysia, especially. We do education for conservation of our natural heritage. And then, of course, capacity building, training, education is very important. And then also another one is research. So the information we can get from the forest, what we have in the forest, we can share with the public. And of course, since the government rules the natural heritage, and we have to work together with them and helping them to achieve our mission. Dr. Hom, issue of conservation, of the forest conservation, is not a local issue. It is an international issue. That's why we have international networking. We have international collaboration, like now MNS and BirdLife International and EU. We are collaborating under a special program called My Forest. And especially when we are talking about climate change and global warming, of course, forest conservation is very important. So I would like to get more information from you that we can share. Say, for example, we through one program called International Important Bird Area, or now we call it Key Biodiversity Area or something. We are looking at the habitat. We're looking about the environment. We're looking about the ecosystem instead of looking for one or two species. So can you explain more about the key biological diversity or key biodiversity area that we are having in the world and focus in Malaysia?
Yeah, thank you, Prof. So around the globe, there are more than 12,000 important bird and biodiversity area, or we also call key biodiversity areas, where they are very important for birds, for wildlife, for entire ecosystem, where the forest plays an important role as a habitats, as sites. So forests are very important, and we like for this, in this forest governance project, we focus on mainly 3 C's. The first is the forest health or forest condition, because the forest, when the forest condition is good, means the site is better or a good place for all living species. So second C about forest coverage, because of the human intervention, the growing need of people. So there are around the globe, as you have mentioned, forest deforestation is a key issue. Or there are several drivers of deforestation, agriculture, like road, building, construction. So many things are happening, and the intact natural forests are divided because of the human intervention. So the forest, we call the second C is the forest coverage. So like forest loss because of the deforestation or agricultural expansion or any other development intervention. So we also monitor the forest loss, particularly the remote sensing and GIS tools. And on the ground, we work very closely with our project partners where they have the expertise in terms of the forest monitoring on the ground, actually what is happening. So that is very important to see the trend of forest loss. Or in other areas, we also have like good news, like the regeneration, where forest will be they're generating naturally, or reforestation or restoration, where the health of forest will be improved and the coverage will be high. And the final and the last C is about carbon stock assessment. Because of the tropical forest means they are very good in terms of climate, the carbon sequestration. So it is very important to see the carbon stock assessment where it can play a crucial role for combating climate change. For example, anything that we do like in Ulumuda, that will not only benefit the local people or the state government or the Malaysia, but also entirely benefit the entire world because you are saving the forest. So these three C's are very important, and we have been working very closely as a partner, as a team, in terms of saving the important bird and biodiversity areas or key biodiversity areas.
Continue for the before we say important bird area, why we use bird as an indicator for the area protection of the area?
Yes, very interesting. Thank you, Prof. So in the bird life context, we use birds as an ambassador of climate change, and birds are the very good indicator of the health or the forest condition or forest health. So for example, within our surrounding our home, you will see around at least 20 species of birds. That means when there are more birds, means the environment is clean, neat, and green. When you don't see any birds, means the environment is not growing. It is, it's not very good. That means also not good for the people. So birds are very important, and they also, like, we do lots of reforestation, plantation by people. But the birds, what we call the nature-based solutions, the birds really like, they eat the fruits from the trees, but at the same time, they disperse the seeds. So every year, there are several thousands of seedlings growing naturally because of birds. And after eating the seeds, so it will become the seeds that can be naturally a natural way of regeneration. So birds are very important species that can tell the state of the environment or the state of the forest.
Okay, so yeah, I understand that. We understand. We want public to understand also. That's why capacity building is very important. We need them to understand the function of birds in the forest, like what you have mentioned about spreading the seeds and regenerating the forest, and then maintain the forest in the good health. So with these climate change issues, how far these birds are affected by the climate change in general or focus in tropical country?
Yeah. So birds, because they live in the forest. So when the forest habitats are not good, so the birds will disappear. So it is an indicator of the environment. So we need to protect the habitats. When you say about birds, not just only the seed dispersal, there's also cultural values, both intrinsic and extrinsic values. At the same time, like a very important source for ecotourism, where you can link forest recreation. You can link with ecotourism that brings green jobs, that also protect the environment, but also create income for local people through bird watching tourism. So it is very important, and birds have a multiple benefits when we save them by showing the birds, because the bird watching people who go in the forest, they are usually rich and they can afford and they can stay longer, and they pay 3 times more than the ordinary visitors. So that also help the local community. Like in the hinterlands, there may be orang asli or other communities who need help or benefit from the bird watching. So to see more birds, we need to protect the forest, and if we can protect the forest, that's good for to mitigate the climate change. So climate change mitigation is forest is the best example, in particularly tropical forest. So the bigger the trees is the best trees in terms of carbon sequestration. So it is very important to protect the forest, and because the big tropical forest, even the small patch of the forest like a big supermarket where you can buy everything, all insects, plants, mammals, birds, and also like if there's a watershed, the forest is very important for water, and without water, there will be no life. So it has a multiple integration in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation, where local people can play a crucial role, and the role of the governments will be very important for the long-term sustainability of the forest and environment that will ensure the sustainability of not only the environment, but also the future of the people.
Thank you, Dr. Home. You have a very vast experience in working and visiting to many countries in this area, in this region, since you are the regional representative for BirdLife International and look after this EU My Forest program. Do you have any good example that we can compare with either in Papua New Guinea or Indonesia, Philippines, that we can share to practice it in Malaysia?
I think one of the good example is the forest governance itself, a different model of forest governance. So in Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia, I think about 93% plus of the forest are owned by the government. So where the government has a key role to play. But in contrast, in Papua New Guinea, 97% of the forest is owned by the local communities, different tribes, different ethnic groups, or private rather than by the government. So the government need to negotiate with the local communities, the indigenous people, like Orang Asli in Malaysia, in terms of one is to learn how they have been managing their forest and other natural resources through indigenous knowledge, skills, and other means. Second, forest is life for them. So they have so much connection with their heart, where it's not just only for the financial gain, but also their spiritual, their cultural, and their part of their life. So forest is part of their life. So we need to integrate the role and the skills and the ownership of the local people in the long-term forest management. So I think in Malaysia, for example, where you also trying to promote community forestry or community manage or community conserve areas, where the local people have more say and more attachment, and they can play an important role in terms of managing the forest. Because to save the forest is not only the government job, it is everyone's job. So the more you can engage the non-government organization and local people with their skills and expertise, it will become a very good partnership with the government, where we can bring the idea of working together or synergy. And in the long run, this kind of partnership brings a big confidence and also ensure cheapest way of managing forest, so that it will become a very important role of all the stakeholders, that they not just want to use the resources, the forest resources, but also they have a role to play for forest conservation. So I think the learning from the Papua New Guinea is a good example of how we can integrate local people's ideas and minds in long-term management of the forest, so that they can look after their forest even in very difficult times.
Thank you. I feel few interesting point that you highlighted. Number one, for example, ecotourism. Ecotourism sometimes misunderstood and mispracticed. People are conflict with recreational activities in the forest. Say, for example, some bringing a four-wheel drive into the forest to enjoy the forest. What is your recommendation based on your experience and the purpose of protected forest for ecotourism? How we can really practice something that for conservation and benefit for tourism? What is your views in this?
When you say about ecotourism, there are three important elements that we should not forget. The first is local community engagement, where in the forest or nearby the forest or surrounding the forest. So the local people must be engaged and participate so that they can benefit. Second is about education, environmental education. It's not just making money, taking people there, but people can get the experience of getting closer to the nature, getting closer to the forest and the environment so that they can appreciate. So what we call the 3 A's of environmental education, creating awareness about the forest or the watershed, then try to change the attitude of people who may not really understand or may ignore in the past, right? Then third, not just to listen and talk, but take the real action. So 3 A's are very important that has to be part of the ecotourism. Yeah. So the final is about environment. It is a nature-based tourism. It's a part of nature-based tourism. So it's not just only making money, but we can really, appreciate the environment. At the same time, we also can get benefits from environment. So the conservation priority is a must as part of ecotourism.
Yeah, sometimes like birding, bird watching, maybe don't disturb much about the ecotourism, the biodiversity of bird, for example. How about activity like fishing? Is there any issues when the fishing activities in the forest, or other comments that the activity that might disturb or destroy the biodiversity?
Okay. My understanding is about any like forest reserves or protected area or national parks or any other important natural sites. You should have a management plan first. That will have a zonation, different zonation. So maybe some recreational value, some may be very important watershed like in Ulumuda, some maybe where local people are living nearby, so there will be also more activities. And some maybe like a recreational fishing, where there are a small river or lakes are there. So it has to come with a management plan, usually like 5 years, where the management plan will stipulate what can be done, what should not be doing, and all the do's and don'ts with rules, regulation, and education. So the management plan will determine what kind of activities people can do when they are in the forest or in protected area or any other community conserved areas. So we must have a plan before we do, otherwise it will be difficult to manage later when there's no proper management plan. So the management plan should guide how to manage the plan and how to use. So there are two things when people get confused, it's a conservation versus preservation. So to me, preservation is to save from use, so like there are so many things may be very important, so we should not be using that. But conservation is to save for use. We are saving because we have to use in the future. We are saving the forest or natural resources because our future generation also will need to use it. But preservation, usually like mostly scientific research, scientific study, where people really strictly should not be disturbing the state of the natural environment. So we have to focus on conservation, where we can create high conservation. At the same time, we also can have a high use. So the sustainable management of natural resources or forest resources is critical for the long-term benefit of the people and the environment.
Yeah, Dr. Hom, thank you. I can see clearly now our collaboration between MNS and BirdLife International, and our sharing information with our country members, our My Forest partners, in terms of long-term forest management. You have mentioned about the capacity building. You have mentioned about government involvement, especially in Malaysia, because most of the land to be preserved belong to the government. And then understanding between local community, and then maybe the tourism operators or business people who are related to tourism industry. We have to sit together to look at the opportunity, protection and conservation of the area. Like, for example, we have been talking about Ulu Muda. We have been talking for long years with Taman Negara, and then you have been to all those places. And then the popular one now is Belum Temenggur, the Royal Belum. We are talking about conservation of tiger. We have been talking about 10 species of hornbills that are famous in the world, where we have the opportunity to bring people from all over the world, the birders, the bird watchers, as part of our promotion for ecotourism or tourism industry in Malaysia. Anyway, before we reach that, we must have understanding among the public and the government policy, enforcement and monitoring program must be in order. And you have mentioned also about the Orang Asli. Orang Asli is a very important component to help monitoring and conserving the our forest ecosystem. What is your comment? Because sometimes Orang Asli also used by other people for over harvesting of forest product. You know, sometimes they said helping people for hunting certain species of animals, for example. MNS have done important collaboration with Orang Asli, especially in Belum Temenggur, which we train them for conservation of hornbills, and we have 10 species of hornbill, and they are living in the forest. They really help MNS to identify the area and then helping in conservation of the forest. So what is your comment in terms of this conflict between certain people that use Orang Asli for over extracting of forest product?
Thank you, Prof. My understanding is the role of Orang Aslis are very important in saving the forest and other natural resources. All white, generally speaking, they take care of the environment and nature because that is their life. Sometimes may happen, usually like people with business interest, they may manipulate or they may use some of the Orang Asli because they know where are the birds, they know where are the, all the, medicinal plants or herbs or honey or big trees. So they know what is inside. So it may, influence sometime by, by the outsiders. But my belief is usually they don't exploit the environment for natural resources. They do what they need. Of course, sometimes, for example, like, shifting cultivation, they move from one place to another place where they need to cut down trees. But in Malaysia, in tropical countries, after 5 years, you will see the same area again greenery. So I don't worry much about like how the indigenous people live and move around inside the forest. I think they are really safeguarding the forest because they don't have much options or opportunities or alternatives beyond the forest and forest products. So unless there's any evidence or proven by research or long-term research, that will be difficult to tell. Generally, when there is much more like deforestation or any other activities or commercial activities, I think it is much more than them, and it is much more like from the outside intervention or people from outside who may have a business interest. But generally, I think orang asli, they are very living in the primitive conditions. And they know how to survive within that difficult environment and situation. So I don't worry much about what they do inside the forest, generally speaking. And in many places around the globe, local communities have created what we call the community conserve areas because of the external influence or external pressure. So they want to create that area. For example, in the Philippines, it is called like the ancestral land, what they call ancestral domains. The lands, the forests belong to their ancestors. So they worship there rather than cutting down the trees. So each indigenous people have a unique relationship with the forest, environment, water, river, everything. So they have a long-term, spiritual, connection. So they don't, do or damage what they do just for their own, needs. And sometimes around the globe, in Nepal, for example, when people need to really cut down the trees, they pray before that. They really, be humble with the nature. We supposed to be not cutting down the trees, but we don't have a firewood. So we have to cut down now. So we are very sorry, but we will safeguard the other forest environment. Something like that. So local people have a very much a fond relationship with nature.
I agree. Orang asli, especially in Malaysia, for example, in Peninsular Malaysia, we don't have to worry about orang asli and the way they are living and they maintain the forest. What we worried about is influence from outside, external influence. So the capacity building, training, and rules and regulation is very important to enforce all this wrongdoing about the extraction of forest product. So thank you for that sharing with, you mentioned about the Philippines just now,
Yes.
about the community forest.
Yes.
So can you elaborate a bit more? Because I can see some area in Malaysia is become the forest islands. And then some forest islands, we still have orang asli living in that fragmented forest. So maybe your experience in other countries like Philippines, we can share so that Malaysia also can adopt this community forest.
Yes. For the case of the Philippines, even the government or any development activities, they must have a consent from the orang asli, or what in Philippines called the Bandai Gubais. So they must have a consent or in writing from the local people before they do anything there. So like pre and prior, inform the concept that that kind of system is there. They even have a department under the Ministry of Environment. So so legally they are very protected. They are very well enforced in terms of safeguarding the forest. So some kind of mechanism that is very important. As you mentioned, capacity building, training are very important. For example, I have seen in Malaysia, some orang asli have blocked the road where some people bringing the timber from somewhere else. So like as part of training in this forest governance project, one of the important aspects is where are the forests coming from or the timber coming from? Are they really authorized or legally where they get a proper certification or process where they got all the permits from the government? So the legal procedures or the scientific area where it's like a part of a scientific forest management that you can take away this many cubic feet of timber for this year. So where the timbers come from? So we need the capacity building or training for tracing. So tracing, where the really timber come from? It is coming from without any evidence, then that means that may be illegal. So need a long-term investment for engaging the local people because they live nearby, they know the best about the area, so they can find out and help the government, and also the forest authority or the parks authority in terms of monitoring of the forest, wildlife, and other natural resources. So yeah, so this kind of legal procedures and also training needs for local people or the civil society or NGOs are very important, where we can help the government in terms of the better forest management.
Okay, very good information and suggestion. I think since Malaysia is very unique, land belongs to the state, not the federal. The state matters. And then maybe at the state level and the local community have to have some guidelines. We have the system where we can control where the timber come from, right? We have the system in Malaysia, but sometimes, of course, somebody like to do something against the law. But this is where local community is very important. And then NGO like Malaysian Nature Society is very important that we are doing it. And then we have the system that our members or our friends can report to us or authority immediately when they see something going wrong at the local community. Dr. Hom, I think we have talking a lot on the function of the community and the role of community at the grassroots level to protect and conserve the environment. And then we have been talking about the function of the forest. If we keep them in general, maybe later we can continue the discussion. I want to ask you one thing that maybe we can share with you. In Malaysia, there are still many primitive questions about forests. Why we want to conserve the forest? Number one, if you keep the tree one day will die. So why don't we cut the tree and bring the timber out of the forest? Number one. Number two, if we keep the forest, we cannot make money off of it. Just now we explained about ecotourism. Can you find somebody to pay, say, our income, annual income, instead of cutting the forest, we keep the forest? So can we get some money from somewhere outside the country or a big company or whatever to pay for the government to conserve the forest? Is that question relevant to conservation, or is there any example that you can tell us that we can share one way of protecting forests? This is outside the other ecosystem services that we will discuss later, and the ecotourism. Now, just talking about the primitive statement on the forest is timber. Timber is forest. So how to help this?
Okay, Malaysia is the most developed country among the developing countries. So you are very much resourceful, if we see, globally. And there are different, global mechanisms, like, for example, carbon financing, where if you can protect the more forest, so then you also get money. So particularly for least developed countries, that kind of, mechanism is still there. I think, okay, so what we are conserving is not only for Malaysia, for globally, for internationally. So, so it all depends on how the forest resources are being managed. So you have also primary forest, where mostly protected areas, where you have all the important flagship species like tigers. So those natural areas are very important. And because without forest, there will be also no, water. So how the whole ecosystem is functioning is forests play a crucial role, not just making money from out of it. So my understanding is when we have so we need again for the forest, we also need a management plan. We also need a management plan. So for example, in Indonesia, they have two types of forest. One is production forest, making money, like 25, 30, 40 years. So it's kind of scientific forest management. So it's a production. So we plant the trees so we can cut and we can make money. But ultimately, we need money, right? So the production forest is, so we have to follow the scientific management and the better ways of managing forest for sustainable use and harvesting. So you can harvest. The second part is the protection forest, where we have created, or like Indonesian government, have created, or in Malaysia, they are like national parks, all the protected areas where they are purely protected for as a protection forest. So we need the legal mechanism to determine from where and how we can cut down the trees. So I think what is important is the land use pattern is very important. Where you can build a house, where you can have trees. If there's a tree, if there's a big watershed, then you cannot toss the trees. Because if you cut down all the trees, then the whole water will disappear. Then when there's no water, means you can't plant, for example, in like Kedah, where rice needs, lots of water. So, and rice, is, evening, morning, we need rice. No rice, no life. So we have to have a better land use plan where we should be protected, cannot touch, and where maybe, because it's determined by scientifically, where we can designate area for forest plantation, forest production, then you can harvest. So we need the win-win mechanism so that we can save the forest environment. We can still keep it clean and green, because with the forest we also can get ultimately oxygen. So it is very important we have a very environmentally sound land use plan so that we can meet the needs of the people. At the same time, we can safeguard our nature, not only for ourselves, but for our future generation. So we need a better land use plan, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. There are so many things if you want to discuss about conservation, because as I mentioned to you earlier, this is not a local issue. This is a global issue. That's why our collaboration with BirdLife International, our collaboration with EU, and then our partners in this region, we are talking about the quality of life, environmental base, and our topic today talking about nature solution. We want to protect the forest, so we want to solve the issues of climate change, global warming, and then many other things, agriculture, pharmaceutical, and so on. That's what we need to understand. So based on that short statement by me, I want you to elaborate more about ecosystem service that we can benefit from the forest. We have mentioned it earlier, but this time you give more focus so that public understand what we can get from the forest if we protect the forest. Just now we mentioned what is scattered, and that part maybe we focus on the public involvement, the government involvement for the conservation. But this time, I want you to elaborate more about just the ecosystem service from the forest that we are protecting.
Thank you, Prof. To me, ecosystem services means anything that you get free from nature. For example,
free
so
from
people
nature.
anything you get.
That is very important. Free from nature.
Nature.
If we calculate it, we give the cost, then the value will be high.
Oh,
Yeah,
millions, billions,
million.
right?
Yeah.
But the same firewood, for example, orang asli are collecting and using for their firewood for cooking their meal. If we take that firewood in the market nearby the roadhead, it will cost money. So it will have a price tag, right? So because people don't care much about, until and unless we get free, from nature, we just, we don't value so much. But it has a high value if we determine in an economic way. So if we, try to see there is a value of the natural environment. So one is like, we get anything free from nature directly, right? Second is like the natural ecosystem has its own way of doing things. It has its own rule. How the soil, the trees, all the leaves fell down, then that will decay, that will create a soil, right? When there's a soil, so the tree can grow there. When more trees means like they can hold more water when it is raining from the, when it is raining, so the water table will be in good condition, you see. So this is just an example. Another, like so many medicinal values, that comes from forest. If there's no forest, we won't be having any medicines, and people will die. Now people go to the pharmacy to buy the medicine, but all the raw materials are coming from the forest. So we really need to understand the importance of forest. So that's very important. So like the air, fresh air, you see, fresh air. So around the globe, many big cities, particularly in developing countries, are now not a good place to live because the air is highly polluted, right? So, but when you saw that people want to escape nearby the in the remote area because they want to have a fresh air. You see, in Japan now they call it like a forest therapy. When they go to the forest, people become already no need to have any medicines. It will give so refreshing.
Forest therapy.
Yeah, forest therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So they go to there. So people are going back to nature because the natural setting that people can really value. So is and also like a cultural value. What we call the intrinsic value. So for example, if you drive all the way to like the Royal Balloon on the way, when you reach on the top, and you see through all the forest landscape, seeing towards Thailand, you really feel beautiful. When you are on the boat in Ulumura, in the water reservoir, you feel, you forget everything. So that really bring, the quality of life. The people's, well-being will determine from our, by, experiencing, by getting closer to the nature. So having said that, because people don't understand, or many people want immediate benefits. They want the money immediately. But because we need to convince, for example, particularly the policymakers, people who can make decisions and who can determine your and my future or our children's future to have a fresh air or polluted air, right? So we need to have a scientific study, even what a basic study that we can put the value of the resources, what we call the monetizing the nature. So we will know if you can protect this forest, for example, in Ulumura, then you can see how many, the mega liters of water is coming every day, then how many, hectares of, rice plantations have been done, how much money have been generated. So you can see the benefits. Rather, if you cut down the trees, you may get lots of money for 3 months, and after that, people will be hungry. And no more trees. You can't get now fresh air or no water, no nothing. So that will be a really disastrous situation. So we need to have a comparative study, what we call the alternative state. Okay, having the forest, all the water shade that we get benefits, versus just developing a very short term, like motels, hotels, without any proper planning. So that will kill the state of the environment. So that will, so basically short term gain but long term pain. So the government always must be very far sighted. They must be thinking 300 years, 500 years planning before they do anything. So that will help, the overall, situation of the area in terms of safeguarding. So ecosystem services are very important that we get from nature. If we don't care the nature, then there will be, no future.
Thank you. You touched a very important statement that I like very much. We need more research on the forest ecosystem. We need more information. Do you think after finish our program, My Forest program, this for the first stage on non-government stakeholders and capacity building, do you think we can continue this project on this forest, not the forest governance, to understand more about the forest in terms of, for example, the ecosystem services in detail? Do you think EU or BirdLife International can collaborate with us in the future to bring more funds to do research in this?
Yeah, there are already very simple techniques, tools, how to monitor and how to evaluate, the ecosystem services. So the BirdLife has already designed a very simple and cheap toolkits, to determine for study on the ground, so that we can find out the values. Of course, MNS has the strength of having 14 branches across all regions. So all the important people with so many knowledge skills are already on the ground. So there is always opportunity to build on. For example, like the initiative that we have taken from this forest governance project in terms of, for future. Of course, I see lots of opportunity, and I think good science is very important, Prof. We know we don't just only science, but we need very good science, and also the science, the theory of science to translate in the real action, so that people really understand and benefit, so that we just only talk, but not just only conversation, but we really need to communicate the science. So we need better communication. So this is very important for the long-term, understanding, generating knowledge, skills, and scientific evidence. Because I think these days we really need an evidence-based communication, so that we can come with the plan and with the the ideas. If we don't do, it will happen like this, and if we do this way, then it will have a this way, these benefits. So I think research, with what we call even the citizen scientist. There are lots of citizen scientists on the ground, so we can use the expertise, knowledge of our, like for example, our MNS members across the country to carry this kind of study. I think we not just money. We need the first, like you, the determination, the clear vision that we have to do, this kind of study research, so that this can be beneficial in the long run, not just only for academically, but also in the real world situation. Yes, we have to work together, and we'll be always happy to provide work in such important assignments.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hom. I think we are going to the end of our session today. Very interesting discussion. We have been talking about the most important is free from nature. That is something important. We need to do more research. We need more capacity building. We need more local engagement. You mentioned just now about the citizen science that what we are doing now, and in line with the government program also. And then we have been talking about the importance of forests for water. Another thing is, especially for the elderly, maybe we have a forest therapy. And then when, of course, we have we cannot forget about the biodiversity in general, because Malaysia is top 12 biodiversity country in the world. I want your last 1 or 2 sentences on this, your advice about the conservation, people, government, and climate change. So just 1 or 2 sentences.
I think, thank you, Prof. Conservation is becoming more challenging because there's quite often less priority and less resources. So although people know the importance of it, so we really need to have a better collaboration and partnership, and what I call the 3 C's. Very good way of communicating, with the government, with the stakeholders. We need a very good cooperation. I think cooperation is very important. Without cooperation, people will come and talk, but they go away, nothing will happen. So cooperation is very important. Then collaboration. So that will lead a better future for everyone in Malaysia.
Thank you, Dr. Hom. We have been spending sometimes a very interesting discussion. And then I like the last word, communicating. We cannot work alone. We cannot work in silo. We have to collaborate with people, and then we have to cooperate. We need to cooperate so that we can really protect our forest, not just for the local, but for the world. Thank you very much, Dr. Hom. Thank you very much, the organizer. Hope to see you again in the future under the climate change discussion. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Prof. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.
Namaste.
Prof, you can start. Prof, you can start now.
Yeah, how to start? I cannot get the cue.
Just you are live now, so you can just ask the question straight away.
I'm talking alone. Okay, everybody. Now we just finished the discussion on the issues of basically on ecosystem services. But now we have a question. I think the 2 important question here is related to climate change. So I think Dr. Hom, you listen to me now. I combine the question because it's related. It's about the climate change. How can nature-based solutions support the climate action at the national level in Malaysia? And then how government, you can advise the government should do as Malaysia now is moving towards or become a champion in the climate change issue. So can you explain that? How can nature-based solutions support climate change, climate action at national level in Malaysia? And how can you suggest the government should do related to that question?
Thank you, Prof, for the very interesting questions. When say about how nature-based solutions can support climate action at the national level in Malaysia, there are 2 important policies. One is the REDD+, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, and NDC, nationally determined contribution, where Malaysia can play a crucial role. I see a great potential for mainstreaming and NBS to support the climate action in Malaysia and beyond. The NBS may be new to some, but it has been very popular since Paris Agreement in 2015, and that has been practicing, for example, in Malaysia, through like RED Plus, and Malaysia has developed the RED Plus in 2017, and is also in the process of finalizing the safeguard information systems. When you say about RED Plus, there are three key important aspects where it needs to be mainstream. First is about to conserve the forest sink and biodiversity, and the role of the federal government and the state governments are very important for this because land is the state matters in Malaysia. So they need a very good coordination between the two tiers of government. Second is the actions to reduce greenhouse emissions and also enhance the forest sinks. And third is implement a sustainable financing mechanism. So we need these three key actions in order to implement RED Plus more effectively. Having said that, RED Plus Malaysia is still in the RED Plus readiness, but there's a lots of viable option to address the emissions for emission reduction and sink enhancement for the climate action. However, it will require resources, for example, to implement the RED Plus more effectively in Malaysia. It will require about 400 million US dollars because you also have the international commitment to fulfill. For example, there is a commitment of maintaining the at least 50% of forest cover in Malaysia. So this is quite important. And the good thing now, Malaysia is in finalizing it is NDCs, nationally determined contributions, which is basically a Paris Agreement, to need to be submit to UNFCCC later this year as part of the Paris Agreement. NDCs are the heart of the Paris Agreement, and all the governments around the globe have committed, which is basically for the achievement of long-term goals of limiting the global warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius by 2050, which is above the pre-industrial levels, and adapting the the impact of climate change. So, civil society organizations like the Malaysian Nature Society and, with support from BirdLife are already engaged with the government in terms of, particularly in the forest sector to, support the NDC initiative. So, one very interesting fact in Malaysia is the, Malaysian government has, committed, to reduce the greenhouse emissions by 45% by 2030. In relation to its 2005 GDP. So there's a very important commitment and in terms of supporting the NDC in the long run. So I see there's a greater potential for mainstreaming and officialization of the NBS in the national policies and programs such as through NDCs and RED Plus. To demonstrate this, we need to really link the grassroots initiative at the national and state level policies, such as like, the MNS is taking initiative like in Ulumuda and other important biosphere area. And they have also mentioned that how Malaysia, can really advocate. The NBS, when you say about NBS, they are globally recognized because there are three main important things. First, it is cost effective. It has to be cost effective to manage the climate crisis. Second is anything that we do at the site level can be scaled up, can be replicated. That will make a big difference. And third is it is an efficient solution to climate crisis, and biodiversity loss, which is a major agenda. So one important aspect is biodiversity loss and climate crisis must be addressed together because they are interlinked in terms of the solving the problem and the issue. So it is very important that is a global strategy. NBS is a global strategy, which is highlighted by the UNFCCC and also post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework for addressing the critical society needs and environmental problems, societal challenges, such as human health, livelihood, disaster risks, reduction. For example, in Malaysia, the issue of landslides and flooding every year. So we need to see these kind of climate issues and problems, and also in adaptation and mitigation of climate and biodiversity loss. And also the most important things for me are two things. One is food, and there is water security. So food security and water security are very important, and NBS tool is an effective way of addressing to solve these problems. So there's a great need for the government and can play a crucial role in terms of advocating at the national level, so that globally we can achieve. And because the Malaysian government has also committed in terms of supporting the NBS through and linking with the CBD process, UNFCCC, and the most important thing is the Sustainable Development Goals (SDG), which is aimed by implemented by 2030. So the NBS is a very important tool in terms of addressing the climate issues, and at the same time to advocate so that in the long run we can achieve and deliver what we have committed. So Malaysian government can play an important role in advocating through the NBS and to address the climate crisis. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Hom. I want to add a little bit. What do you think of international collaboration to support the Malaysian effort for the climate change?
I think, it's not also global agenda. So the role of international community are very important. The multilateral agencies in terms of capacity building, in terms of green climate fund, where financial resources are very important, right? For example, the Malaysian government has committed to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. By 2030, which means 35% is determined that the resources will be mobilized locally, but 10% is like a conditional. So we need the resources from the international agencies so that we the Malaysian government can implement more effectively. So the role of international agencies, like what I call 3 Cs, we need a very good coordination at the different levels of the government and the international agencies like UN agencies, UNFCCC. Second is need a very good cooperation, because we all need to in the same boat in addressing the common problem, right? So coordination, communication, and collaboration are very important. We have to bring a synergy in terms of sharing experiences from within the country, but also regionally and globally.
Okay, thank you, Datam. One last question from the participant is about services from the nature provided. Services provided by nature is free and high value. You have been talking this many times.
Yes.
Can you explain how do we put the price tag to the ecosystem services?
Okay, this is very, very interesting question. Thank you, Prof. Yes. So it is basically called the economic valuation. So there are different tools and techniques to determine the price tag. So there are also toolkits, to do that research. So the toolkits are very important in terms of different ecosystem services for water, for timber, for harvested goods, or medicinal plants, or recreational tourism. So all can have. So basically, for example, if someone visits a national park, how many tourists visit there, for example? So you can multiply, they have to pay the entry fee to get in the park, right? The user fee. So that you can count, you can count that how many people have contributed, how much money to visit that site. So this is an example of contributing to recreation and tourism. So because the biodiversity area or the particular site is very important, it's really need to see from bigger picture. If it is like a lake, for example, there may be lots of recreation day trips. So you have to have all the on the ground price to calculate, so that then eventually you can turn as an economic value and then determine the price. So for example, the drinking water, that comes from the water sets is free, but eventually it will go to the drinking water supply office or water supply department, and they will now charge to the customers. So that's where things are charged when we use the services. So there's a very important call TESA, a very simple toolkit TESA, where it can be carried out as part of the valuation of the particular sites or area that will bring the economic value, and that's very important. We have to address and also what we call the alternative state. If instead of recreation, what will happen is there will reside hotels and everywhere. So the biodiversity value will go up because of the scenery beauty will be gone up. There will be only lodges, hotels, so that people may not come in the long run. Those people who came for the scenery and the recreation and tourism. So the economic value is very important to advocate and to convince the policymaker. Look, this is the value. For example, having national park for many years versus just cut down trees. If you cut down the trees, you will know how much money you earn from the timber, and that everything's gone. After that, it will be, you may have to wait another 30, 40 years to get back the timber.
Okay, right. Yeah, I can see that, but we don't have a proper formula or calculation to do this. Say, for example, what we discussed about Ulu Muda, when Ulu Muda are responsible to supply water to Kedah, Penang, and Perlis, and then they are like Penang are leading in tourism, in industry, and so on. And the industry that Penang have actually is serving the world. So how much world community should pay for Ulu Muda? So this is the thing that we need to come up with a solution. Then maybe someone can help. And we have a next question. I think the last question, because questions keep coming. We don't have time, and I want you to have a quick answer on this.
Yeah.
You have mentioned about Philippines and Malaysia and Papua New Guinea in terms of the ownership of the forest, right?
Right.
So what do you think, or which country, which formula that will be more productive in the future?
So it is a matter for different model of forest governance.
Yeah.
Right. So the most important and effective is more collaborative. More collaborative management approach will help. But having said that, each country has its own forest governance model, which we can't do much. But if you go to a small scale, for example, community conserved areas where local indigenous people are managing, at that site level, that might be very cost effective, more ownership, feeling towards more ownership towards the resources. So maybe there will be a long-term sustainability and benefits. So each model has its own strength and also weaknesses. The most important thing is we need the community engagement or the stakeholders engagement in the decision-making process, and provide and support to the government where and when public consultations are required and requested. So there's no shortcut and exact answer, but it will depend on the governance model, and when there is a need for collaboration, better collaboration, and it is time to talk and engage in the decision-making process, so that many people and the government will have the win-win situation in terms of managing the forest area.
Thank you, Dr. Hom. I think you have covered most questions. I mean, we cannot cover all, because especially in developing country, the processes, developments are moving very fast based on public demand and so on. So education and then public education and in general is capacity building is very important. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, since climate change, biodiversity conservation is not a local issue, it is a global issue. So the collaboration that 3C you mentioned just now need to be enhanced, and then the government have to support as they are politically collaborating or communicating with the international body or globally. So I think, thank you very much, Dr. Ho. Thank you for all the participants stay with us, listening to this nature-based solution for biodiversity conservation and climate change. So I hope we can meet again in the future. And then from this meeting, this discussion, we can depart towards a better solution and then protect our nature, conserve our nature, and manage our nature. Thank you very much, Dr. Hom. Thanks the organizer for giving the opportunity for this discussion. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
My pleasure, Prof, and also all the participants who are listening around the globe, I think more than 22 countries. So I really thank you everyone for taking your time, and we hope to meet and greet again. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you.